All right, so we've learned a little bit about the history of paper beads. We learned what they were. You learned who I was. So let's do the final step for your lesson this week and get into making some of the paper beads. One of the first things you want to do is make sure your area is clear, that you're wearing clothes that you don't mind getting dirty when you do art. We are using glue, we're using magazines, sometimes the colors will rub off. So you want to make sure that you have an apron on or clothes that you don't mind getting dirty. You also want to make sure that you ask your parents if you can use all the materials involved. This is a hint from a mom, not from a teacher. Us moms love when you ask for permission, even if you know we're going to say yes. Just give you a little hint, something that we love. So let's take a look. Well, before we take a look at the materials, we have to do one more thing. We need to think about what our end project might look like. What colors am I going to use? What size beads? Am I going to build a structure? Am I going to do a piece of artwork? Am I going to make jewelry? How will I use my beads? It's important to think about because when you start looking for your scrap and your recycled papers that have come in, you want to look for colors and you want to look for texture possibly. So thinking about what your end result is really important. So take a few minutes, think about it, even draw the picture out of what your final, research a little bit how paper beads have been used and think about what you want it to look like. So take a few minutes to do that and then we'll talk about what materials you need. All right, so now that you've thought about what your project is going to look like, let's talk about some of the materials you're going to need. You're going to need a pair of scissors. Pretty much any time I do any kind of art, I definitely have paper towels or a towel nearby. I prefer something that I can reuse, but for this one, I'm using paper towels. I also have wax paper. I like to put my finished product as it's drying. Anytime I use glue on wax paper, it's not going to stick as much. So that's a great surface for it to dry on. Some people are very exact in measuring their beads, so I have a ruler here. I have extra paper that I no longer need. This is from a project I did with my students. I have a magazine, I have some mailers, I have a piece of paper I was going to throw out. So this is the paper I'm going to use to create my new beads. I have a glue stick that'll help me. I also have Mod Podge. School has been closed because of snow. My white glue is there. Mod Podge is pretty much the same as white glue. You can use Mod Podge or white like Elmer's glue. Whichever you have is fine. I also have a pencil so I could mark the lines if I want to be exact and know where I'm cutting. I also have a pen. Sometimes on that newsprint, pencil doesn't work as well, so I brought both to draw lines if I need to. I have a paintbrush to apply the glue if need be. I also have a variety of sizes to wrap my beads with. I have a straw. I have a toothpick, and you can see the width is very different because the width inside of here is what the width of your bead, how much room you have in between your beads. So this is going to be a tighter bead. So it's going to be a wider bead. And I'm not sure what material is going to work best. And I'm going to experiment with a little bit of this. This is a nail. I have a nail. I have a metal straw, a reusable straw, and I also have a chopstick here. So I'm going to try making beads with all of those. I also have a cup of water. We're going to get back to that. This isn't for me to drink, but this is another technique for making your beads. I have a small cup in case I need it. And I also have nail polish. Now, definitely ask your mom if you're borrowing her nail polish, but this is great to finish your beads with. Add a little bit of shine to, a little stick at the end, and especially if there's something like a sparkle to it. And this one has an iridescent look. So I'm going to try all of those on my beads as well. So I have everything I want to experiment with. I have my tray that I brought out my products and my materials. And I also have this paper bag because, again, I'm working at home. I don't want to ruin the surface. So I'm going to work on this paper bag to keep my table clean. So now that I'm ready to go, I've cut the paper bag to make it a little bit flatter, and I start measuring out my lines and cutting my paper. And I want to try to keep it neat, and I want to cut as much paper as I can right away. So that way, when my hands get a little bit sticky or gluey, I don't have to go ahead and cut and then go back to gluing and cutting and gluing. You kind of save yourself a little bit of time if you get your cuts done right away. Then you want to look at your piece and you have to decide which side do I want and what colors do I want, what's going to appear at the end of the bead. I take the glue stick, I glue the ends a little bit. I'm using a skewer here to roll it. I bring the glue together, and once I have that connected, then I glue the rest of that triangle cut. And I slowly start rolling that. I'm going to do this for a few more. Experiment with techniques. What's the best area to glue? What works best for you? I always like to glue that little bit of a tip at the end. You could always go back after everything dries and add a little bit more glue if you have to on those tips. Don't forget to put that wax paper down so your beads do not get stuck to a surface. They'll come right off of that wax paper really easily. I've done a lot with the skewer and the glue stick, so I want to start changing up my technique and start experimenting. Here I'm starting to use a straw, which is going to give me a wider hole in the middle of the bead, which could help depending on what my end project is and how I'm going to be using that bead. Next, I'm going to start experimenting with the white glue, or in this case I use the Mod Podge. I mix it with a little bit of water. I use a paintbrush to apply paint at the start, and then I'm starting to dip the paper as I roll right into that water glue mixture. And again, I'm trying different surfaces, different widths, just experimenting a little as I go. So definitely experiment with different glues, different paper. They're going to give you different results, different widths, different cuts. If you look on the slides, there's a couple different variations. Even what you're wrapping them around. This is the first time I've tried it with a nail, and it's coming off super easy. Whereas you saw the toothpick, not so much. So make a bunch of beads. Make more than you think you're going to need. So ladies and gentlemen, folks, students, have fun with this. Make a lot of beads. Make more than you think you're going to need. It's kind of like now I'm chasing to find the best bead that I can make. I'm thinking that I might have cut these a little wide, so I'm going to make some new cuts on my paper. And I'm going to continue making beads. I want to try some different materials. I want to try wrapping with different items. So I'm going to be here. I'm going to be making paper beads for a while. I hope you have fun making beads. I hope your family gets involved with this. And I can't wait to see your final products that you create after you have the lesson with Sarah next week. It has been an honor to make paper beads with you, to learn about paper beads with you. And this has nothing to do with the lesson, but I'm going to send a message out there. If you're one of my former students and you're watching this, this is one of the things that I dislike about this whole pandemic more than anything is, and I love getting to connect with you, catch up with you in the hallway, see how you're growing. So if you're one of my former students and you're out there and you're watching this, send me an email. Tell me how the year's going for you. I would love to hear from you. And even if you weren't one of my students, I would definitely love to hear from you. And I will get back to you. So that's just a little PSA in there. I'm going back to making these. I will see you all soon. Have a great week. Bye-bye.